Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Mama Tales, a space where we share our stories, our truths, fears, and most importantly, accomplishments that we make in this motherhood journey. If this is your first time listening, welcome. There are loads of episodes you can binge on, so feel free to do that. And you can also check out this pod's Instagram page, that's at Mama Tales Podcast, where I share a lot more content related to the episodes published. In some exciting news, can you imagine that this podcast is 1 year old? I looked back and saw that the very first episode was published on April 24th, 2021. I can't even bring myself to listen to that episode because I know I was so nervous. I can still feel that nervousness up until now. Like if I channel it back, my voice was so shaky. I remember that night I was so cold just because of nervousness and anxiety because I didn't know how it will be received. And well, my editing, I don't know. Let's just say we survived. We survived. You listened to it. You loved it. And that's why you're still here, I hope. But I'm so proud. I'm so proud of myself for sticking to it, even when I didn't know if anyone would be listening to it or want to be part of it. I'm so proud of all of you for being here week after week. Like, surely I cannot take that for granted. I'd be insane to do so. So yeah, here's to 1 year and to very, very many more. Before I introduce this episode storyteller, I've come to like this hard space where I don't know, I'm feeling like my body definitely requires me to slow down. I had big dreams of what I wanted to do even after the baby came, so that there's no gap in the podcast, but realistically I don't see that happening. And I've been battling that sense of failure, or like I'm letting you guys down, I'm letting myself down. But honestly, I don't know, like usually, like one example is that this episode is late, right? It's supposed to come out on Saturday, but it didn't come out on Saturday. And I mean, I felt bad about it, but there's also very little I could do about that. I needed rest. So I'm kind of contemplating taking a bit of a break now and until the baby comes and I've settled down, which I can't even give a timeline to it. Anyway, yeah, so just a heads up. That's just a heads up that I might be taking a bit of a break to just focus on this next step in my life. Okay, sad story is over. So let me introduce you to the story you are about to listen to. This story comes from Jane, a single mom to a lovely young boy. She talks about her thoughts on motherhood, especially her own experience with her mother. I think her story is one of those that will make you reflect on your own childhood and how that affects the kind of people we grow up into and how we interact with those around us. At least that's how I felt when I had it. Without talking too much, let's listen to her story.
Hi, I'm Jane Karaoke, mom to an amazing 2-year-old boy, almost 2 years. We're turning 2 in a month. And I am a single mom, single parent, whatever they call it these days.
Take us back to your thoughts on motherhood. Had you always wanted to be a mom, or or did you just find yourself in that position?
Well, I've always wanted to be a mom for as long as I can remember. And mine was an aching desire. Because I know, you know how growing up when adults or teachers or, would ask us, what would you want to become when you grow up? I always wanted to say a mom. But of course, I never did because, that's not something you aspire to be. It doesn't sound ambitious. You have to want to become a doctor or a lawyer or, those big, big titles. And for me, I wanted to become a mom because growing up, I somehow understood that it's not as simple as making just a decision that, I want to be a mom and it happens. Because I witnessed the women around me suffer miscarriages. So I knew that's something that's not completely in my control. So yeah, that's why I really wanted to become a mom, because if I wanted to become a doctor or anything else I set my mind to, I could easily do it. But being a mom, that one I knew it wasn't just going to happen. And that proved to be true when in my adult years I visited two fertility specialists to make sure that things down there are a okay. And this was because for like before I started seeing the fertility specialists for a year and a half, I had been trying to get pregnant, but nothing happened. I never once missed a period. If anything, they were always a day early. So I was almost certain that something was definitely wrong, and I needed to know what was wrong because my partner already had a child. So I knew the problem had to be me. So I did all sorts of tests, pelvic ultrasound scans. I did blood tests. I mean, my doctors even got tired of me at some point. They're like, you know what? You're okay. You are like everything is okay. You don't even need medical interventions because I had considered harvesting my eggs. It was that serious. I was serious. I was serious. I really, really wanted to be a mom. That's the one thing I wanted the most out of life. And also another reason why I wanted to be a mom is I never had or I never felt like I had the mom that I wanted or deserved or every child deserves. So I wanted to prove myself wrong and prove her wrong. That there are better ways of parenting and, raising your kids, and you don't have to be as brutal. Like she didn't have to be as brutal as she was.
How did you feel when you found out that you were going to be a mom?
Well, that's by far one of the best days of my life, second to when my son was born. And again, going back to, you know, understanding that pregnancy, I have no control over that happening. So for 1.5 years, I had tried getting pregnant. That didn't happen. That relationship unfortunately ended for other reasons, not because I couldn't bear children. And then many months later, I had an encounter with this guy. And I don't know if it was a lack of intelligence or common sense on my part, but I convinced myself that nothing was going to come out of it. I mean, I had been trying for a year and a half, never missed a cycle. So you mean to tell me one night is going to change my life forever? Let's all laugh because 2 months later, 2 months later, I was in the bathroom panicking with two test strips. I was so confused. I was so shocked. I was like, "Ay God, Yani, this is how we've decided. This is how I'll be introduced to motherhood." So anyway, that happened. I took the test. Just so you know how much I wanted to become a mom. I remember before, like peeing on the stick, and you know, I had this random crazy thought, like, what if you're not pregnant? I mean, it had been 2 months. I had missed two cycles by that time. So, and I was like, okay, it could be my hormones, could be stress because I was working overtime at that time. I was a flight attendant at that time. So, work was stressful. Things at home were not great. There's just so much happening around that time. But at the same time, there was that voice to the back of my mind, like, you know what you did last summer. So I was in the bathroom and I'm like, okay, what if and I'm not pregnant? Because for me, that would have been the determining factor. I have never, never missed a cycle. So now I've missed two cycles and then it's a negative result. And I remember falling to the floor and sobbing. I was crying like a baby. And that's when I realized just how much I wanted to become a mom because how things happened and the person it happened with, I knew if I was pregnant, I would be doing it alone. That didn't even scare me. But the thought that I might not be pregnant, that scared me. But anyway, I was like, you know what, let's just take the test. We'll be fine either way. Where sadly, wacha nikwambie, I was on a layover at that time. So I was in a hotel room. I wanted to scream. I couldn't scream. I was just jumping from corner to corner, almost bouncing off the walls. I was ecstatic. I was so happy. Again, just so y'all can understand how much I wanted to be a mom. Me, it's insane. The next day when I went back to, because I used to live in Doha. When I went back to Doha, I had a day off and I had intended to go to the mall to get groceries. And I passed by the baby shop. I think it's called the baby shop. At the, let me just go check how, hey, let me just see how much baby clothes and, baby accessories, how much these things would cost me. Ndio niende nijipange vizuri, budget. And then, I kid you not, I went back home that evening, zero groceries and bags full of baby clothes and baby items. Like the amount of things I bought in on that one trip, were the things my son survived on for the first 6 months of his life. That's how much I shopped. That was it. I remember the only things I had to buy were like the wash basin, and I think that was it. And now the heavy items, the strollers and the feeding chairs. But clothes and other accessories, I was good.
You say you were a flight attendant at that time, right? How did the idea of pregnancy kind of mesh in with work?
So as a flight attendant, you are not, I mean, working as a flight attendant, you're not allowed to fly in that state. So, of course, I knew I had to immediately resign from work. Also, I was living in a Muslim country. I was unmarried and pregnant. So I had to hush hush, not tell us. But then for the first, I think I only broke the news to my friends a week before, or maybe a month before I left. But I delayed resigning because, of course, I was going to do this alone. I mean, I even talked to the guy who was responsible, just not to assume his reaction and, deny him that experience. But he was like, you know what, I'm not ready for this. So I knew I was prepared for that. I like, no hard feelings. I didn't even feel anything when he said that. But I didn't know what I was going to tell my family. And it wasn't just breaking the news that I was pregnant, how it actually happened. Like I knew, especially my brothers, I knew they would be so disappointed in me. So I was just like, wow, I have to just, first figure things out. Of course, with pregnancy and everything, there are a lot of things, money and all that stuff. Of course, I'm coming back home. So I have to get an apartment, furnish the apartment, prepare. So I did the preparation. Yeah, I did the preparation while I was there. So that by the time I'm coming now home, I won't have to do too much. So by the time I resigned and left the job, I was 3 months pregnant already. And the craziest thing is, before I took the test, because I took the test when I was 2 months pregnant, I never experienced anything. No morning sickness, no nausea, no nothing. But the moment I took that test, it's as if my body knew what was going on and was just waiting for the rest of me to get on board. And things shifted. Because I remember at work, of course, there's pressure and everything. The smell of coffee would, yeah, it was tough. It was tough. But at the same time, I was so happy. Yani sadly, me, I was overjoyed. There was nothing that would take me from that. Yani me, I was just happy. Even if I threw up, I would throw up and just smile. I'm like, you know what? I am a mom. I am so happy. I mean, even when I came back, I think at 5 months when I was going for my checkups, the doctor realized that my placenta was low-lying. It's a condition, I think it's called placenta pravia, where the placenta is, it's blocked the cervix. It's not on the at the top as it's supposed to be. And she was like, oh, you have to be careful. Don't strain yourself, blah, 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 blah. Don't exercise too much. Don't do this, don't do that, because you might risk, bleeding or preterm. Me, she was just talking. I was just, me, whatever. I don't care. Me, I am pregnant. I am floating in air. Hiyo ni shida yenyu na watu wenyu. There was not a day during that entire time I wasn't happy. Even with the cravings, because I'm alone. Even with the cravings at night, I would just wake up, prepare whatever I wanted. If it's something I had to go and buy, I would go and buy in the same, like, I think when I was maybe 5, 6 months pregnant, I was craving chapatis a lot. And, buying chapatis from the supermarket, sometimes they're not fresh. And I learned how to make chapatis. I learned how to make samosas. I learned how to cook a lot of things, to prepare a lot of things during that period. So for me, my pregnancy, I would say, was smooth. No matter anything happened. The placenta previa after, when my baby, I think by third trimester, it had already resolved itself. It went back to where it was supposed to be. I don't know how it works, but for some women it does resolve on its own. So mine, by the time I was 37 weeks, because my doctor had told me at 37 weeks, if it's not gone back to where it's supposed to be, they'll have to schedule a CS, because they can't risk me going to full term or experiencing labor, because things would just go wrong from there. But thank God, everything worked visually, and carried my pregnancy for 42 weeks. I wanted to wait because I wanted a natural birth. And I don't understand why there was so much negativity, stigma around CS. So I was like, I don't want to go down that path. I want to have a natural birth. So it was on the 11th of May. I woke up that morning and I was just like, me, I'm done. I called my doctor. I'm like, you just have to induce me because nothing is happening. I did the membrane sweep, I think a week before that, nothing. So I was like, you just have to induce me. I want this baby out. So I went to the hospital and the plan was to be induced. But then he insisted on a final scan just to see, you know, where the baby is or how things are looking. And also just to check if I had dilated. I was only 1 centimeter, just one. So he insisted on a final scan. And then he noticed that the umbilical cord was tightly fixed around my son's neck. It wasn't that tight, but it was tight. I'm not a doctor, but he was telling me it would be a risk to give birth naturally, because he thought that's the reason why my son was not, he wasn't dropping. The cord was it was kind of straining, so he was like, you know what, we'll just have to operate on you. I wasn't for that idea. I tried convincing him, let's just try. Let's give it a try, and then we'll see how things. But at the same time, I could see the lack of confidence in him. Yeah, so he didn't want for me to take that risk. So I was just like, you know what, let's just operate. So that was on Monday, and he scheduled the CS the next day. And I remember I got on a call with my sister because I was alone in the hospital. It was COVID time. Because my mom lives in Shags. She was stuck in Shags. I think my brother was also visiting her at that time because my bro was the one who was supposed to bring me to hospital. But he was also stuck. My sister lives in Kikuyu and, she has her life. So I was alone. So I called her. I'm like, oh, yeah, so this is what we've decided, and they're going to operate on me tomorrow. And she's like, why can't they do it now? It was around, I think, 5 o'clock at that time, 5 p.m. So I call my doctor. I'm like, you know what? See, we just do this thing now, get over and done with it. But hey, I will butcher this word. The anesthesiologist had left, had left the hospital. So he was like, no, we can't do this because, we need him. But I don't know. He was just like, you know what? Just give me 5 minutes. Called the guy and he agreed to come back to the hospital because he hadn't gone that far. So he came back and it was a rush. Like at that point, it was just chop chop. They came, prepared me. I didn't even have time to fully sit with. You want to tell you like, okay, it's a CS. I have had things. I've had how things go after a CS. So it was just so quick. By the time the guy came back, it was around 6. By 6:30, I had already delivered. But now the shocking part, when I delivered my son, he cried a little bit and then he went to sleep almost immediately. So I thought the nurses would take him to the nursery to allow me time to sleep, digest everything. Because I am numb from the waist down. There's not much I can do. So they wheeled me to my room, moved me to my bed, and then they proceeded to place my son right next to me. And I was like, wait, you guys are going to leave me with him alone? And they looked at me, they're like, yeah. I'm like, what am I supposed to do when he wakes up? I am a numb from the waist. I can't move. So if he wakes up and I want to breastfeed, how am I supposed to do it? Anyway, good thing he slept for, I think he slept for like 3 hours. But then now, like, again, this entire time, I was happy. I was happy. So my son woke up. Of course, he wants to breastfeed. I tried getting him to latch. He wasn't latching. And now I'm panicking. And my son doesn't cry. He screams. So I was just like, where? Okay. So I press the call button. Me, I'm telling the nurses, I can't do this. You need to help me. So they tried to sit me down. We tried all positions, but for some reason he couldn't latch. And also that's because I've forgotten the term they used. It's like flat nipples. So yeah, it wasn't easy for him to, like touch. So the nurses brought an empty syringe and they were pulling at my nipples. It was painful. It was painful. So they're pulling on my nipples. Still, the boy won't latch. He is screaming the place down. We tried for an hour. Nothing worked. And it's not like I didn't have milk. I had, because my boobs were so full. Eventually, because I had formula with me. So I just told the nurse, you know what? It's been an hour. I'm frustrated. The boy is frustrated. We need to feed him. Just prepare a bottle for him and then we'll figure out what the problem is. And I can't forget how the look she gave me. It was as if I told her to pull the plug on him. She was just like, you want to give him formula? She was like, oh, apana, you don't want to do that. Don't get him used to formula. Don't introduce bottles. Ati atasahau matiti sijui. And I was like, it's been an hour and he's hungry. So are we really going to go back and forth? I was just like, you know what? You just prepare that bottle. I will deal with that. The most important thing right now is to feed the boy. And the days that followed, I still don't understand what happened, but I couldn't breastfeed, for lack of better words. The doctors even prescribed some pills for me. Nothing worked. We tried hot compression, cold compression. We tried, again, the pulling with a syringe. They tried manual expression, and nothing happened. And I was so frustrated. And it almost became a spectacle in the hospital because I would get even like 10 nurses coming into the room like, oh, ni wewe umeshindwa kunyonyesha. But I was just, at the same time, I was just like, you know what? I just want to leave the hospital. I want to go home because I know I'll be comfortable and safe at home and my people will help me find solutions. Like, I just wanted to leave the hospital. So the day before No, the day we left the hospital, the doctor came in the morning, and then we tried the manual expression again, and it worked miraculously. My boob started leaking, but it wasn't enough to satisfy my son. So still, I was substituting with the formula, and they avoided the bottle. They were feeding him with the syringe. I don't know how they did it, but yeah, they did it with a syringe. I still don't understand why there's so much negativity around formula and bottles. Anyway, I went home thinking things would be easier. It was worse. Because everyone was looking at me like, where? Everyone was like, hey, so tujawahi sikia hii. Ati you can't breastfeed. Wa? You know, at sijui it's a mental thing, acha stress. I'm like, but everyone is creating a stressful environment for me. How? At some point, I even stopped with the visitations. I was like, you know what, just leave me, let me figure things out on my own. At least it took me a month and a half to finally get to a point where I didn't have to substitute with formula, and now we were exclusively breastfeeding. But where it was tough, it was tough.
That sounds super rough because if anything, the thing you're hoping that would calm both of you down would be like, could we just breastfeed? It's the answer to a lot of things. But yeah, but I assume things from that point on just went on up, right? So how are things?
Why? I mean, 2020 was I gave birth in 2020. There's so many things that happened that year. I mean, I knew it was going to be hard parenting alone, but I didn't expect it to be that hard. And the support I thought I would get, I didn't get that. So it just made it even just harder. But I was just, again, I was, because I knew what I was doing, and I was the one who made the choice to do things this way. So I just convinced myself, you know what, it's okay. It's going to be hard, but we can do this. We are good. We're strong.
Do you have any particular moment that was a bit too difficult for you?
There were so many things that happened, but the one person who I thought would better understand what I was going through was the one person who brought so much pain, I would say, during that time. And it was, I just couldn't understand. I'll get into that into in a while. But I mean, I had expectations, and I expected people to show up for me in certain ways, as entitled as that might sound. I was only setting myself up for disappointment because I thought, you know, I've been with these guys through, like my siblings now, throughout their parenting journeys. I've babysat their kids. I have done all these things for them. So why wouldn't they want to do this for me now that this is happening to me? And it didn't happen the way I wanted. But at the same time, I just made peace with that. I was like, you know what? They have their own lives to lead. And just because I want them to show up for me a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, now they have to break their backs and drop everything they're doing and make it all about me. But my biggest, or the one person who disappointed me the most, was my mom. This is the part of this story. I was so conflicted because it's something I've never shared with anyone. But anyway, um, growing up, simply put, I grew up in a very verbally abusive environment. I lost my dad when I was 7 years old. And the most weird thing about that is I have zero memory of my dad. I mean, I was 7 years old, so there's only so much I can remember. But the one memory I have of him was the last time I saw him in hospital. And I later came to learn that that was the day he passed. Why that's the only memory I have, I still don't understand. But anyway, grew up in a very verbally abusive environment, and without getting into, you know, too much detail about that, throughout my entire childhood, from as young as I can remember till when I was 16, I would say, because I was in Form 3, I used to cry myself to sleep every single night because I didn't understand why my mom was treating me the way that she was. Disclaimer, I am not trying to villainize my mom. I love her and I would literally do anything for her. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that whatever she did was okay. And I remember, like, every time I would just ask God, just like, why, out of all the kids that I know in school and in our neighborhood, why I had to be the only one to grow up with an abusive parent. I had it all. I got called all sorts of names and everything. And it didn't make sense to me because I was even questioning, like, it's not that I'm stupid or dumb. Throughout my entire academic life, I was always top 5 because I knew how much that meant to my mom. I I wasn't disabled, not that that warrants any negative treatment, but as a child, I didn't understand any better. I was like, it just doesn't make sense why she hates me so much and why she treats me the way she does. And what made it worse was I didn't have anyone I could talk to about it because my siblings were going through the same struggles I was going through. And every time I tried talking to them, they're just like, hey, it's your mother. You just have to get used to it. Itabidi tu umezoea. That's just how mom is. And when I talked to, like my teachers or friends or relatives, everyone made me feel like an ungrateful, spoiled kid. Because we lived in a good neighborhood. I was going to a good school. So everyone was just like, shame on you for saying the things you're saying. Do you know how many kids would wish to be in your position? You have a roof over your head, you're going to a good school. You, it was, yeah, like life is good. How dare you complain? And it felt like me being treated the way I was treated was a price I had to pay to, in quotes, enjoy, because I didn't enjoy any of those things, to enjoy the things that I enjoyed. So it got to a point I just learned to suppress those emotions because everyone invalidated my feelings. And it even got to a point I was like, you're really ungrateful. You really are ungrateful. But at the same time, I would listen to stories, from other kids, and it didn't sound the same as, how mine sounds. I was just like, but God, why? Why do things have to happen the way they're happening? Anyway, that went on till I was 16 years, and I think I was in Form 3, first term. Like, my mom had this habit. Every time she would, like, pay for rent or school fees or paid even for, like, bills or did shopping, she would always show me the receipts. And it was, do you see how much I'm sacrificing for you to enjoy the things that you're enjoying? Like, you know. So that morning, it was first term, it was Form 3 first term. We were going back to school after the December holidays. And again, it was a drill. She would wake up in the morning, go to the bank, pay fees, come back home in a shouting rage, and I'd get ready for school. We'll get into the car, and it was, I'm sacrificing an entire day just to shughulikia for you. I could be doing other things. We go into the supermarket. I want to buy things that I will need in school, and it's just another thing. And I remember that day, I think it was my breaking point. Like I said, it was the last day I ever shed a tear. I went to pick up pads. Like, it's so weird. Why pads? Kwanza pads. Pads she used to get so pissed off. I don't understand why. Even to date, when you tell her at sijui you have cramps, sijui, she's like, you're pretending. So every time I would pick pads, she would, wewe sasa you just want to waste money, ama sasa unataka kuenda kwanza kuonyeshana shule that. And I was just like, you know what, me, I've had enough. I dropped the basket and I told her I don't even need these things anymore. I went to the car. Of course, I'm in tears. She follows moments later, having paid for those items. But now the conversation shifted to how I've embarrassed her in front of everyone. I don't think anyone even noticed because I didn't even shout. I didn't even say. I just dropped the basket and I walked out. So it was, I have embarrassed her again with the receipt. I've spent this much money paying for the school fees, yada, yada, yada. And now I have to apologize. And I just remember asking her, like, it was the first time I ever talked back. And I was like, did you ever want to have kids? Because it doesn't make sense why you're treating me and my siblings the way that you're treating us. And I was like, you could have stopped at 1 or 2. You had to go all the way to 4. Of course, it was like I was talking to a wall because she didn't say anything. And I remember when she dropped me at school, I told her, this is the last time I'm coming to this school because I just can't. I told her, you just take me to a public school. I'm not coming back to the school. So yeah, that was the last time I ever shed a tear. Things didn't change. It only got worse from that point. But again, I didn't have anyone to tell these things. So I was just suffering. Yeah, I was just keeping them bottled inside. And hey, things changed last year. I've cut that story short because I don't want to get into too much detail. But something happened last year in November. My son was 18 months at that time, and already I was dealing with the tantrums and the meltdowns and the angry outbursts and everything. And I know every parent struggles with that, but I had so much anger and frustration. And in as much as I used a gentler approach to deal with the meltdowns and everything, I just couldn't understand why, even after the situation, died, I was still so angry. Like, I was so angry. And the person who wanted to become a mom more than anything else left the building, and I hated being a mom. Like, I regretted every single day. I regretted my decision. I was just like, I'm not cut out for this. This is too much for me. I can't handle it. And I remember there's a day my son threw the biggest tantrum, and I snapped. I snapped at him. That was the first time I ever did that. And hey, there was a look of sheer terror on his face. Like, he immediately just stopped crying and he sat down and he was just looking at me, and it broke my heart. And I was like, that was the final nail on the coffin. I was like, I can't do this. This is just too much. Like I said, so many things had happened in 2020 and also in 2021, and now this is happening. And I remember days prior to this incident, because that time I didn't have a nanny. She took a break and she'd gone to see her parents, so it was just me and my son. And I had been getting this frequent severe headaches and feeling faint and dizzy for weeks, but I ignored it because I was like, maybe I'm just exhausted, or I'm not drinking enough water, or I'm not getting enough rest. So of course I tried all these things, but nothing worked. But at the same time, I was just like, this is just one thing I don't want to deal with right now. But then I remember one Sunday evening, yeah, we were preparing dinner. It was just me and my son. So usually when I'm preparing dinner, I either put him like on top of the kitchen counter or on the floor and give him toys to just play with. So this particular day, he was on the kitchen counter and he was watching one of his shows on my phone. And I remember feeling, it's almost as if I can't even describe that feeling, but it's like I was fainting. And I grabbed onto the kitchen. Yeah, I grabbed onto the kitchen counter. And of course, I'm panicking because there is food cooking on the fire. My son is on top of the kitchen counter. Had I fainted or collapsed, what would have happened? And I am an overthinker, and I'm always thinking the worst possible scenarios. So, of course, I was panicking and I didn't know who to call, because even after that, I was still feeling dizzy, and I just knew something was going to happen, and it can't happen like this. Luckily, my nanny had called me that morning and she told me she's back in town, but she's visiting a friend and she was to come the next day. So I called her. I'm like, you have to come home because I don't feel okay. So she came home. Next day, I decided, you know what, let me just go to the doctors because I need to find out what's going on. That visit to the doctor unlocked a new fear, my death. Not because the doctor told me I was dying, but I had overworked myself into sickness. And we did a series of tests and they were inconclusive. He just told me, you know what, if you're not careful, of course, we talked for a while, and he just told me, if you're not careful and if you don't start taking care of yourself, both mentally and emotionally, your next visit is going to be totally different. So now this incident happens with my son, and I'm like, I can't go on with life living like this. Because the same year, I had tried my hand at different businesses and they all failed. I got scammed, I got conned, I lost a lot of my savings. And I was just like, well, I am failing at life. It was just too much. But there was a solution to all this. And in as much as I went into this really dark place, because also I realized that my son has no one other than me. Were anything to happen to me at that time, he would be alone. So I terrorized myself for weeks. For weeks, I created this bully in my head, and we made friends. And I was constantly criticizing myself, and like everything I did, it even got to a point waking up in the morning and getting out of bed was just hard. I didn't enjoy motherhood at all. I even quit working because I just couldn't do it. And all this time, I prided myself on being strong because I thought I could handle anything life throws at me. But now everything just came crashing down, and I just like, I can't go on. And I remember a week after all these things happened, I woke up one morning in so much pain. Like the left side of my body was so uncomfortable. I was in so much pain. The left side of my face was burning. It's like someone lit a fire on my face. So I rushed to the bathroom because I'm like, I need to splash my face with some cold water. And before I even turned the tap on, I saw myself in the mirror. And that was the ugliest I have ever felt. I had this, I forget, I think it's called milia or something. They're like pimples or tiny sebaceous cysts. The entire left side of my face, especially towards on the bridge of my nose and on like my top eyelid. And I've never felt that ugly. And I have this desk in my room. I just sat down and just started crying. Whatever it is that is eating me is physically now starting to show. I was like, this is too much. And I was just like, God, just take this away from me because I can't go on. I don't care how you're going to do it. I just take it away from me. Even if you're taking me away, just do it because this is too much for one person to handle. And I sank deeper in that hole, and I can't remember the turning point. I don't know what happened or where things changed, and I decided, you know what, God has given you the one thing you wanted the most out of life, and you've given up on it. So I just had to push myself because I knew the things I had to do. I just didn't want to accept it. And part of the reason why I felt the way I felt was because, again, growing up, everyone invalidated my feelings. Yeah, so I just told myself, you know what, allow yourself to feel the pain, because my childhood was just pain. I have no positive memories of my childhood. And I also felt like I was failing as a mom because one, I didn't have a childhood to borrow from, and also, especially this regulation of emotions, it was just too much for me. So I just told myself, you know what, sit with your emotions, just allow yourself to feel the pain, because I realized, in as much as there are people who have it worse than I did, that allows for gratitude and kindness and compassion and grace, but it does not invalidate my feelings, because it hurt when I got my first period and I was too scared to tell my mom that for days I used tissue paper and I stained my uniform in school, embarrassed myself in front of my friends. And I even got into the business of selling donuts just at a profit to get enough money to buy pads. And the first time, like after months after, when I finally told her that, I have my periods and I need money to buy pads. And again, I went to sleep crying that night. And she was just like, you are, anyway, she said whatever she said. So it's just like, it hurt. It hurt that I didn't have anyone to talk to. It hurt when I was in class 5. A neighbor almost tried to take advantage of me. And had it not been for my nanny at that time, God knows what would have happened. But I didn't have anyone to share that with. So I carried all this pain and hurt, and because I didn't have an outlet. And it's now affecting me, because if these things didn't affect me, I wouldn't be here at 28 years still hurting from these experiences. So I just allowed myself to feel those emotions. And the worst thing I think I did was holding on to hope that, or silently wishing that things were different. Yeah, that things didn't happen the way they did. And, you know, like it wasn't a competition on who has it the worst. So I just had to learn to let go. Just have the courage to allow myself to honor the past as it was, forgive those who need to be forgiven, to forgive myself, and to acknowledge everything that has led me to this point. And yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. But I'm also glad it happened. I mean, not the way it did, could have been different, but had I not fought to continue the way I was, I would have turned into something totally different, someone I wouldn't be proud of. Yeah, so just had to make those tough, tough choices, and also remind myself to celebrate myself for choosing not to become a bitter person, an angry person. Because at some point I was very angry. I was very, very bitter, and it's not like I wanted. I was seeking closure, because closure wasn't going to change anything. My mom apologizing wasn't going to change anything. I was the one who had to accept the things that were going through. There was no audience to perform for. There was no approval. I wasn't seeking admiration. I wasn't trying to convince anyone that my childhood was difficult. I was the only one to accept those things. Now I'm handling situations better than the older version of myself would. Like, even with tantrums and, you know, the angry outbursts, I'm not as angry as I was. But then sometimes I even catch myself laughing. And the other day I was telling my nanny, like, wow, because this is teaching me that there are other ways to live life. And I was like, you mean there are people who've been living life like this? Like, I can get used to this, because I remember my son, again, tantrums. And in that moment, I didn't know. I don't know what happened. I think he threw a spoon on the floor or something. Kids cry they cry about everything. Yeah, so he threw a spoon on the floor, and he expected a reaction from me, but I didn't react. So of course he starts crying, and in that moment, because what I used to do before was try and reason with him. So in that moment, I didn't know what to do. So I just sat him on the couch. I sat next to him. I was like, do you want mommy to hug you? He was like, no. He's just screaming, kicking, and everything. And I just sat there in silence. And he eventually leaned in for a hug. And, we stayed there for a few moments. And he asked for water. I brought him the water. He took a sip. And there's always this thing he does when he knows he's done something wrong. He'll just look at you, smile, and then say, hi. And he did that. I was like, you, you. So you know what you're doing. Eh? You're just. And he says, I'm happy because at that time we had started, learning about emotions and everything. And he was just like, I'm happy. And I was like, wow, it's that simple. Like it's just simple. Just allow him to sometimes, because also not all behaviors or all these things require conversation. Sometimes just let him ride out those emotions. And because also one thing I used to do subconsciously, because again, that was my emotional blueprint, was every time he would cry, I would, of course, in a gentle way, it's okay, Baba, stop crying. Like, don't cry. So I was teaching him, you know what, your feelings, don't feel your feelings. Just, ziweke na huko. So things have changed. I'm no longer the angry person. I'm not frustrated. I'm in a very, very, very good place. I'm now enjoying motherhood. I still struggle. I still struggle just like every other parent. But I have made peace with, you know, our situation, and also because that's one of the things I also felt like I failed, because that's not how I wanted things to happen. So I made peace with that, and I was just like, you know what, there are certain things I won't be able to do, and that's okay. I'll only focus on what's important and just do whatever I can do. It's okay that my son won't get to enjoy certain things. It's okay.
Did you ever talk to your mom about this stuff?
At some point, well, of course, my brothers told me the reason why she is the way she is, and it's because she's been through traumatic experiences, but she decided to hold on to that pain, and she was pain with pain, trauma with trauma. So I did at one point try to talk to her, but she's already set in her ways. Like there's almost nothing you can tell her. So when it comes to my mom, I still, to date, I still ask myself the same questions, but I just have to make peace with it, because something also happened to one of my siblings, and one of them tried to commit suicide as a result of the environment we grew up in. Luckily, they survived, but even that didn't change my mom. So there's nothing I can say or do that would change just who she is. And in as much as I have made peace with it and I've forgiven her, the one thing I told her is, if she continues to do the same thing with her grandkids, because she still does, I told her, if my son ever grows up hating you or not liking you, I am not going to talk him out of it. That's going to be on you. I'm not going to carry that cross for you. So if you don't show him how to treat you, that's going to be on you. But she is who she is. I mean, sometimes you just have to accept people for who they are, in as much as it hurts. You just, like I said, I was still holding on to hope that, things would change, or go a certain way, but it still hasn't. I mean, even at 7 months, because I remember when I went to Doha, of course, I was there for like 5 years. Hey, those were the most peaceful years of my life. So I was away. And the reason why I took that job actually was to get away from, it was an escape. I never experienced the abusive. And I thought things were finally okay until I broke the news to her when I was 7 months pregnant. And because she was in Shags, she lives in Shags. And I was like, oh, yeah, mom, so I'm 7 months pregnant, blah, blah, blah. I'll be giving birth in a few months. And her response was, and these were her exact words: mimi sitaki kuchoka, sitaki kusumbuliwa. Sai nikitaka kukaa chini, nitakaa chini na nisiulizwe swali. It was uncalled for. I wasn't asking her for anything. I was just sharing the news. And I was just like, I remember I even told my nanny, because my nanny has been with us for 9 years. She knows my mom. So I remember I told her, I was like, oh, so I just called mom and broke the news to her. And guess what she said? And my nanny laughed. She was like, ata wewe, kwani you don't know your mother? Like, what else did you expect? So we've all just come to just accept her for who she is. And there's just nothing much we can do about it. Yeah, I accepted her as she is. I've learned to release the shame and the guilt and just accept how things have transpired and, just find peace in being patient with myself. Because, like I said, I was trying to do everything and it's impossible. So now I'm just like, you know what? Slow down, be patient with your process. I've also chosen not to fight pain with pain. I still love my mom. We talk, but if you come home, whenever she's around, you'll find us chatting happily. Even sometimes she calls me on the phone and we talk for hours. Because, I mean, she already has enough hurt and pain, and it wouldn't be fair for me to add on to that. So, yeah, but whenever she gets into her abusive nature, I just switch off. I just allow her to talk because sometimes, people just want to be heard. They just want to talk. Yeah, so I just let her do her thing. And yeah, but I'm also reminding myself to deal with emotions in the moment. Like if I wake up feeling anxious or, I deal with it in that moment and not to allow it to carry forward to tomorrow because I stayed in that for way too long than it was wise to do so for 28 years. And here I am paying the price. So, yeah.
Her story was such a roller coaster experience. Everything from how she wanted to become a mom so badly to her past and her present that is guided by forgiveness. Like I said earlier in the episode, you cannot help but put yourself in her shoes. Personally, I remember looking back at my own relationship with my mother. Currently, she is in the States and has been there for a while. So, we don't get too much time to like bond and stuff like that. And one morning out of the blue, she called me and she was crying and then she just apologized for how she treated me as a child. That definitely wasn't something I was ready to listen to because I had really buried quite a lot. In fact, I didn't even acknowledge what she was saying until a bit later on in the conversation because I was like, what is she apologizing for? But there were a lot of things that she did that I just shrugged off as I think that's just a thing moms do. But clearly it's not. I know it's not because I find myself making lists of things in my head that I should not do to my babies. Anyway, that's a story for another day because if we start unlocking that and then it will just be like a whole mess and that's not why we're here. Thank you so much for listening so far. I appreciate you. Here's to 1 year of Mama Tales and to very many more, hopefully, God willing, and all that jazz. I'll catch you in the next episode, hopefully. So, bye.